We all remember the shows that made us laugh. But some shows made us feel something else entirely. Something we couldn't name at the time. Something cold. Something wrong. Because buried beneath the puppets, bright colors, and fake smiles were shows that didn't entertain. They lingered. And the worst part, these weren't nightmares. They were real. They aired on TV. They were shown to children without a second thought. This is volume 2 of the disturbing kids shows that somehow made it past the gatekeepers. Some were banned, some became lost media, and others are still floating online, waiting to be found by the next unlucky viewer. Getting lost in time sounds like an adventure, until you realize no one is coming to save you. This is Land of the Lost, a Saturday morning kids show that aired on NBC starting in 1974. It was produced by Sid and Marty Krofft, the minds behind shows like H.R. Pofenstuff, known for their weird drug trip aesthetic. But Land of the Lost was different. It wasn't just weird, it was existentially terrifying. The plot? A family, a father and his 2 kids, are rafting when an earthquake sends them plummeting through a time portal into a lost dimension. They land in a place where dinosaurs, aliens, and ancient civilizations all exist at once, and they can never go back. Every episode takes place in this dead-end jungle pocket dimension, surrounded by high cliffs and glowing skies. The environment is bright, but it never feels warm. You can almost hear the hum of isolation. And then there are the Sleestaks, lizard-like humanoid creatures with glowing eyes and hissing breaths. They don't talk. They don't run. They just appear, emerging slowly from caves, towering over the characters with twitchy movements and gaping mouths. They look like they were sculpted in a panic and filmed with no direction. That makes them worse. They don't blink. They don't stop. And they're always watching. But what really makes Land of the Lost disturbing isn't just the creatures, it's the tone. Despite being for kids, the show deals with time travel paradoxes, alternate dimensions, quantum loops, and godlike beings known as the Zarn and Enoch. Some episodes end with no resolution. Others reveal that the family's actions have doomed themselves in other timelines. One episode features a future version of the son, trapped in madness and warning his younger self not to make the same mistake. Another episode implies that time is eating itself, and the family is stuck in a glitching simulation. Keep in mind, this was airing during Saturday morning cartoons. The stop-motion dinosaurs, wobbly sets, and VHS filter just make it feel more like a fever dream than a family adventure. Even the bright colors fade under the crushing feeling that there is no way out. Land of the Lost isn't remembered because it was exciting. It's remembered because it was strangely hollow. Because as a kid you thought they'd escape. But they never did. And week after week, you watched them try. Sometimes it's not what they say that haunts you. It's what they don't. This is Nosy Bonk, a silent, smiling figure with a plastic face, long nose, and a deeply unnatural way of moving. He wasn't from a horror film. He wasn't a villain. He was a character on a BBC children's show called Jigsaw, which aired in the late 1970s and early 80s. And yet, to this day, he's remembered more like a childhood demon than a TV mascot. Noseybonk didn't speak. He didn't teach lessons. He just existed. He would appear in short skits during the show, silent segments where he crept around parks, gardens, and empty rooms, acting out puzzles and riddles. But nothing about him made sense. His movements were jerky, robotic. His face, a permanent porcelain smile, never blinked. And the nose, cartoonishly long, almost phallic, bounced as he tilted his head and stared. And stare? He did. The music during his segments was just as unsettling. A looping xylophone melody played over grainy footage as Noseybonk hopped, skipped, or slowly turned toward the camera. No dialogue, no narration, just you, the music, and his face. Children at the time didn't understand what they were watching, and neither did their parents. Some believed Noseybonk was meant to be whimsical, a mime-like mascot teaching through physical comedy. But the execution was so bizarre, so deeply off, that he became something else entirely. A face that haunted dreams, a mask you couldn't look away from, a being that didn't feel made for kids or for anyone. Even worse, he never had a backstory, no explanation, no name spoken aloud. He just showed up, week after week, staring, smiling, breathing behind the mask. Some viewers recall believing Noseybonk would crawl through their windows at night. Others remember having to leave the room whenever he came on. And honestly, that reaction makes sense. Years later, the BBC quietly retired the character, but clips of Noseybonk have resurfaced online, becoming viral again through lost media threads, analog horror edits, and creepypasta lore. He's been called the Slender Man of British television, and it's not a joke, because he feels like something that just shouldn't exist. He wasn't violent, he wasn't evil, but there was something in his silence that spoke louder than words ever could. Some say Noseybonk was just a man in a mask, but to the kids who watched him, he was something else entirely, and he never really went away.
Come on, I can't see in this!
Stop yelling, Noseybonk. Noseybonk is not supposed to speak.
True, but he and his friends can sing. Watch.
Some shows meant well, but good intentions don't make them any less disturbing. This is Vegetable Soup, a 1970s educational TV show created to combat racism and promote diversity, but the way it was made, the editing, the music, the puppets, the silence, ended up doing something else entirely. It became one of the most accidentally terrifying kids shows ever put on television. Aired on both PBS and NBC, the show was aimed at children aged 7 to 12 and featured a variety show format made up of different segments. That might sound harmless until you actually see what those segments look like. Each one feels like it was made by a different team, in a different universe, under different substances. The tone. At first glance, the show is colorful and playful, but that's exactly what makes it so uncanny. There's barely any music in some scenes. Other segments use looping, out-of-tune synths or eerie droning. Characters will speak in long, awkward silences or deliver dialogue that sounds like they're trapped in a void. The transitions between segments are jarring, suddenly cutting from a cartoon to a claymation nightmare to a public service announcement-style interview. You never know what you're watching. And somehow, that makes it scarier. The infamous segment, Outer Scope. The most disturbing part of Vegetable Soup is without question the recurring segment called Outer Scope, a low-budget puppet and live-action hybrid featuring a group of kids traveling the universe in a wooden spaceship shaped like a cabinet. Yes, really. The puppets are stiff and glassy-eyed. The spaceship itself looks like it belongs in a garage sale. And the sets? Empty, echoing, uncanny, like the kids are trapped in a cosmic liminal space. The aliens they meet are often faceless. The sound design is minimal. The lighting is cold, clinical, like they're wandering an abandoned educational facility that never ends. It feels less like PBS and more like early analog horror. Why was this so weird? The show's heart was in the right place. It was trying to teach kids about race, language, and kindness. But the technology, the scattered tone, and the intense, unfiltered presentation turned it into something surreal, even nightmarish. To many viewers, Vegetable Soup didn't feel like a show. It felt like a broadcast signal intrusion, something that was never quite meant to be seen. And maybe that's why it's stuck in people's minds. Because even if you forgot the name, you never forgot the feeling it gave you.
It's gone! Our scope is gone! Help! Come back! The ship! Wrong, Edgar! Took our spaceship!
Oh, no!
Who took it? The garbage man, I guess.
You can call it educational if you want, but most kids remember it as something closer to torture. This is Crashbox, a children's educational TV show that aired on HBO Family starting in 1999. It was created to teach spelling, logic, and math. But if you actually watched it as a kid, you probably remember something very different. The noise, the screaming, the melting, twitchy clay faces, and that feeling that you were watching something you weren't supposed to. Imagine flipping channels as a kid and landing on this. A decaying junkyard filled with machines that vomit static and slime, puppets that talk in broken voices, a clayman who forces you to solve riddles while he chews rotten food into the camera. This wasn't Sesame Street. This was digital horror dressed as a classroom. Each segment of Crashbox featured a different character, but they were all hosted by creatures that looked like they crawled out of a corrupted CD-ROM. There was distraction news, a grotesque anchor yelling trivia over blaring horns and glitching backgrounds, haunted house party, where you solved word puzzles narrated by a decaying Frankenstein puppet, dirty pictures, a sleazy janitor wiping filth off portraits while muttering at you, and Captain Bones, a decomposing pirate skeleton who throws math at you like a threat. Everything was covered in grime, chaos, and VHS static. Even the title screen feels cursed. Flickering animations, wailing cartoon noise, the kind of thing you'd find on a corrupted school tape labeled "Do Not Show." And the pacing? Non-stop. No transitions, no breathing room. 1 minute, you're doing math. The next, a stop-motion puppet is screaming inches from the camera while the frame blurs and shakes. It was like being trapped in a broken learning game that never let you log out. But here's the creepiest part. It wasn't just weird, it was smart. The show genuinely tried to teach kids problem solving, but it did it in the most psychologically aggressive way possible, using overstimulation, grotesque visuals, and unpredictable horror pacing. And that's why it stuck with you. Because even if you learned something, you walked away with nightmares. Crashbox only ran for 2 seasons, but it was rerun on HBO Family for years. It quietly burrowed into kids' brains. Never truly popular, never truly forgotten. It just existed in the corner of cable TV like a virus waiting to boot up again. If educational television had a haunted house, Crashbox would be playing in every room.
Dave, my brain's getting tired. Next time I want you psychomath rookies to be refreshed and ready to rock and roll. Do you hear me? Good. Now get yourselves out of here. Y'all be giving me a headache. Professor Rocket's out.